Thanks for boring history. Take a slow breath. Let your eyes soften. Tonight we travel backward, far beyond cities, beyond kings, beyond pyramids, beyond memory itself. Tonight we drift into one of the greatest mysteries of human history. The silence before writing. The age without voices. For nearly 99% of human existence no one wrote anything down. No diaries, no laws, no love letters, no war records, just silence. Modern humans, Homo sapiens, have existed for about 300,000 years, but writing only appeared around 5,000 years ago. Everything before that is darkness. Archaeologists dig. Anthropologists study bones. Geneticists trace DNA. But for tens of thousands of years, we have no words. And that is our first lost age. Before cities, before civilization. Long before the great cities of Uruk. Long before the pyramids of Giza Plateau. Long before the empire of ancient Egypt. Humans lived differently. They moved with the seasons. They followed animals. They slept beneath open skies. For tens of thousands of years, humanity was nomadic. And yet, we know surprisingly little about how they thought. What stories did they tell around fires? What gods did they imagine in the dark? What did they fear? We can only guess. The Great Gap, 300,000 BCE, 10,000 BCE. This enormous span of time, the Paleolithic era, covers the majority of human life. During this time, humans survived ice ages. Massive animals roamed the earth. Continents shifted in climate. Entire populations disappeared. And yet, we have almost no names, no leaders, no recorded events, no personal voices, just tools, stone tools. The earliest known writing system appeared in Sumer around 3200 BCE. Everything before that is reconstructed like a puzzle missing most of its pieces. Imagine trying to understand the modern world with only broken phones and scattered shoes. That is what historians face. Cave paintings, messages without words. In caves across the world, humans left images. In Lascaux Cave, in Altamira Cave, in parts of Indonesia, animals run across stone walls. Hands press against rock. Shapes and symbols repeat. But we do not know what they mean. Were they prayers? Hunting instructions? Art? Magic? The people who painted them left no explanation. The meaning is gone. Another silence. The vanished peoples. During the Ice Age, humans were not alone. There were others. The Neanderthal lived in Europe and Western Asia. The Denisovan lived somewhere in Asia. They made tools. They buried their dead. They may have made jewelry. And then, they vanished. We do not know exactly why. Climate change, competition, disease, interbreeding. Modern humans carry traces of their DNA. But their cultures are mostly lost. Another missing chapter. The First Revolution and another mystery. Around 10,000 BCE, something dramatic happened. Humans began to farm. In regions like Fertile Crescent, people domesticated wheat and barley. They built permanent settlements. They stopped wandering. This was the agricultural revolution. But here is the mystery. Why then? Humans had existed for hundreds of thousands of years. Why did farming suddenly begin in multiple places around the same time? Climate stabilization after the last ice age may have helped. But the shift was not simple. Early farming was harder, less healthy, more disease, more labor. Yet humans stayed. Why? Historians still debate. Another lost reason. Cities appear, but records do not. By 4000 BCE, large settlements existed. In Mesopotamia, in the Indus Valley, along the Nile. But writing was still developing. Some early cities rose and fell before leaving written records. Entire cultures vanished without written explanation. One example is Saddle-Huruk. It was massive for its time, dense, advanced, yet we do not know its political structure. No kings recorded, no laws preserved, no personal names, just walls and silence. The fragile nature of memory. Even after writing began, it was rare. Most people could not write. Records were fragile clay, papyrus, stone. Floods destroyed them. Fires erased them. Conquests shattered them. When Nineveh fell in 612 BCE, its libraries were buried. We were lucky some tablets survived. But how many libraries did not survive? How many stories burned? How many discoveries were forgotten? History is not a complete record. It is a survivor's record. The deepest lost age. The biggest gap of all is not about kings or wars. It is about thoughts. We do not know. The first joke. The first lullaby. The first myth told beside firelight. The first promise. Those moments are gone. Forever. And yet, they shaped everything. Closing Drift Part 1. So tonight as you rest, remember that most of human history is not written. It is imagined, reconstructed, guessed. For every event we know, there are thousands we do not. And this is only the first lost age. In Part 2 we will drift into another mystery. Water wave the sunken worlds, civilizations beneath the sea. Lost coastlines, submerged cities, rising waters after the Ice Age. And the possibility that entire cultures now rest beneath oceans. Slow deep, no ads history for sleep. Take another slow breath. Imagine the ocean at night. Black water, soft waves, moonlight stretching across the surface. Now imagine that beneath that water are cities. After the ice, when the world drowned. Around 20,000 years ago, during the last ice age, the world looked very different. Massive ice sheets covered northern lands. Sea levels were lower, much lower. So low, in fact, that entire land bridges existed where oceans now roll. Between Asia and North America, there was once a vast stretch of land called Beringia. People walked across it. Not boats, not ships. They walked. And between United Kingdom and mainland Europe was a region now lost beneath the North Sea, Doggerland. It was not a small island. It was a vast green landscape. Forests, rivers, animals, humans. And today, it is gone. The slow rising waters. Between 18,000 BCE and 6,000 BCE, the glaciers melted. Sea levels rose by more than 120 meters. Not overnight, not in one catastrophic wave, but steadily, relentlessly. Coastlines moved inward. Valleys filled. Low plains disappeared. If you were alive then, you might have noticed the shoreline shifting within your lifetime. Fishing spots vanishing. Burial grounds swallowed. Villages abandoned. generations would have watched the world shrink. And they would have told stories. Stories of lands that once were. Stories that may have become legends. Doggerland, Europe's Atlantis. In the shallow waters of the North Sea, fishermen sometimes pull up strange things in their nets. Stone tools, animal bones, fragments of antlers shaped by human hands. All from Doggerland. Before it vanished, Doggerland connected Britain to Europe. It was rich with life. Archaeologists believe Mesolithic communities thrived there for thousands of years. But as waters rose, people retreated. Then, around 6200 BCE, a massive underwater landslide near Storiga triggered a tsunami. Waves may have crashed across what remained of Doggerland. And that was the end. No written account. No final message. Just water. The drowned coasts of Asia. South of modern China, beneath the waters near Japan, lies a mysterious structure off the coast of Yonaguni. It is called the Yonaguni Monument. Massive stone terraces, sharp angles, step-like formations. Some believe it is natural rock. Others wonder, was it shaped by human hands before the sea rose? There is no clear answer. The monument rests quietly underwater. And the debate continues. Sunderland, the lost heart of Southeast Asia. During the Ice Age, much of what is now underwater in Southeast Asia was dry land. A vast region called Sunderland connected modern Malaysia, Indonesia, and parts of mainland Asia. Rivers flowed across broad plains. Humans hunted and settled there. As seas rose, Sunderland disappeared. Some researchers suggest that flood myths in the region may echo memories of this drowning world. Not one single flood, but centuries of rising water. Memory turning into myth. The Black Sea Flood Hypothesis. In the 1990s, researchers proposed that around 5600 BCE, the Mediterranean Sea burst through into the freshwater Black Sea basin. The theory suggests a catastrophic flood. Water pouring through the Bosporus. Shorelines swallowed rapidly. If true, communities living there would have experienced sudden devastation. Some scholars have wondered whether this event inspired later flood stories, including those recorded in ancient Mesopotamia. But the hypothesis remains debated. Evidence continues to be studied. Another uncertainty. Another gap. India submerged cities. Off the coast of India, near the Gulf of Combat, sonar scans once detected geometric shapes beneath the water. Some researchers claim they found ruins of an ancient city older than the Indus Valley civilization. If true, it would push back urban history dramatically. But evidence is controversial. Artifacts were difficult to date precisely. Mainstream archaeology remains cautious. Still, the sea keeps secrets. The fragility of coastal civilization. Most early civilizations formed near water. Rivers, lakes, coasts. Water meant food, trade, life, but it also meant vulnerability. When sea levels rose after the Ice Age, the most fertile and attractive lands were the first to vanish. If complex societies had begun forming along those ancient coastlines, their remains would now be underwater, hidden, unreachable without modern technology. How many early experiments in settlement were erased? We do not know. Atlantis, memory or myth. Around 360 BCE, the philosopher Plato wrote about a powerful island civilization called Atlantis. It sank beneath the sea in a single day and night of disaster. Most scholars consider it allegory, a philosophical lesson. But some wonder whether older flood memories influence the story. Perhaps not one city, Not one empire, but many small coastal worlds slowly claimed by rising waters. Over generations, stories merge. Details fade. A drowned village becomes a drowned kingdom. A drowned kingdom becomes Atlantis. The psychology of rising seas. Imagine watching your homeland disappear. You move inland. You rebuild. You tell your children about the old place. They tell their children. After centuries, the story becomes: there was once a great land, swallowed by the sea. This is how memory transforms. Not through lies, but through time. And time is the greatest eraser. The ocean as archive. Today, underwater archaeology is expanding. Researchers explore submerged ruins near Alexandria in Egypt. They study ancient harbors off Greece. They map drowned forests off the coasts of Australia. Every discovery reminds us: the shoreline we see today is not permanent. It is temporary. The true archive of early human settlement may lie beneath waves. The quiet depths. The ocean floor does not preserve easily. Currents shift sediment. Salt corrodes. Wood rots. Stone erodes. Finding evidence is difficult. And so the lost coastal worlds remain mostly invisible. Yet we know they existed. Because sea levels were lower. Because humans lived near water. Because artifacts are found offshore. The pieces are there. Scattered. Incomplete. Closing Drift Part 2, Section 1. The sunken worlds are not fantasy. They are geological certainty. Land existed where water now rests. People lived there. Loved there. Built there. And the sea rose. Slowly. Patiently. And covered it all. This is only the beginning of Part 2. To continue expanding toward your full long episode length, just say: far below the waves. Light disappears. Color fades. Sound softens into a low, endless hum. And in this dark stillness, history waits. The drowned rivers of the Ice Age. When sea levels were lower, rivers stretched far beyond today's coasts. What is now shallow ocean was once grassland, forest, wetland, river valley. Ancient rivers flowed across the continental shelf. Off the coast of Australia, sonar mapping has revealed the outlines of prehistoric river channels now buried beneath sand. Off the southeastern coast of United States, researchers have identified submerged forests, tree stumps preserved underwater. These were once dry land. Humans likely walked among those trees, camped beside those rivers, left footprints in soil that is now seabed. But water erased the surface, and with it, most traces of their lives. The Beringian Plains, a lost homeland. Earlier we mentioned Beringia, the vast land bridge between Asia and North America. It was not merely a narrow crossing. It was a broad subcontinent. Cold, yes, but inhabited. For thousands of years, people may have lived there, hunting mammoths, fishing rivers, raising families. Then glaciers melted, and Beringia disappeared beneath the Arctic Ocean and the northern Pacific. If settlements existed on its coastal edges, they now rest underwater, unmapped, unseen. An entire chapter of early American history may lie beneath those cold waves. Submerged forest, ghosts in the tide. In certain rare places, the sea reveals what it once covered. After storms along the coast of Wales, ancient tree stumps sometimes appear at low tide. Dark, twisted, thousands of years old. They are the remains of forests drowned when seas rose. These trees once stood in air. Birds nested there. People may have rested in their shade. Now they stand only briefly exposed before tides reclaim them. They are reminders. The coastline is temporary. The silent continental shelf. If you look at a global map of continental shelves, the shallow underwater areas bordering continents, you see enormous zones. These shelves were dry during the Ice Age. They were fertile, flat, perfect for settlement. And now, they lie 50 to 120 meters beneath the sea. Archaeologists believe that some of humanity's earliest coastal migrations likely occurred along these now submerged corridors. But investigating them is difficult. Water pressure, sediment burial, limited visibility. Every discovery requires enormous effort, which means vast areas remain unexplored. The difficulty of discovery. Imagine trying to find a stone hearth, a wooden post, a cluster of tools, on a shifting seabed, covered by meters of sand, across thousands of square kilometers, in low visibility, with powerful currents. It is no wonder we have found so little. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. It may simply be depth. The North Sea's hidden past. The North Sea floor has yielded stone axes, mammoth bones, human remains, all from the lost lands of Doggerland. One human skull fragment was dated to over 10,000 years old. It belonged to someone who walked that land when it was green. Who were they? What was their name? Did they watch the shoreline creep closer each year? We will never hear their voice. Only the silence left behind. The Mediterranean before the flood. Long before classical civilizations, the Mediterranean coastline looked different. Shorelines extended farther. Harbors that are now underwater were once beaches. Some early Neolithic communities built settlements near those shores. When seas rose, lower districts flooded. People moved uphill. Over generations, the old neighborhoods disappeared beneath water. In places like southern France and coastal Italy, underwater surveys have identified submerged prehistoric sites. Not massive cities, but evidence of life, evidence of adaptation, evidence of loss. The Black Sea's quiet basin. The Black Sea has deep, oxygen-poor waters. This environment preserves organic materials better than many other seas. Recent underwater explorations have discovered remarkably well-preserved ancient shipwrecks there. If ships can survive for millennia, what else might survive? Are there drowned coastal villages resting intact in deeper zones? Possibly, but exploration continues slowly. The sea does not give up its secrets easily. The pattern of human settlement. History shows a repeating pattern. 1. People settle near water. 2. They build. 3. They trade. 4. They grow. 5. Water shifts. 6. Settlements adapt or disappear. This pattern stretches from prehistory to the modern age. It is not dramatic most of the time. It is gradual. A meter of sea rise over generations. A harbor silting up. A river changing course. People relocate. The old place fades. Eventually, it becomes myth. The science beneath the waves. Modern marine archaeology uses side-scan sonar, sub-bottom profiling, magnetometers, autonomous underwater vehicles. These tools can detect shapes buried beneath sediment. Sometimes they reveal ancient walls, harbor structures, shipwreck clusters, but identifying a true prehistoric settlement beneath meters of sediment is rare. It requires luck, funding, patience, and years of analysis. For every discovery announced, hundreds of square kilometers remain untouched. Could entire civilizations be missing? It is important to stay calm here. Most evidence suggests that complex urban civilization began after sea levels stabilized around 6000 BCE. But smaller, organized coastal communities may have existed earlier. If they did, they may now be underwater. Not massive empires, not skyscrapers, but villages, trade hubs, cultural centers, lost not to war, but to geography. The ocean as time capsule. The deep ocean floor, far from continental shelves, is less likely to hide human settlements. Humans stayed near coasts, near rivers, near fresh water, which means the most promising lost zones are continental shelves, drowned river valleys, ancient deltas. These areas are vast and largely unexplored. The abyss holds layers of mud and memory. A future archaeologist's dream. Imagine a future expedition. Thousands of years from now, divers descend into waters covering what was once a modern coastline. They find concrete foundations, steel beams, glass shards, and they piece together a story. They debate, they theorize, they argue, just as we do now. And perhaps they will say, much of their early history is missing, because some of ours already is. The Final Drift Part 2. The sunken worlds are not legends carved in fantasy. They are geological facts wrapped in mystery. The Ice Age ended. The waters rose. The coast shifted. And humans adapted. But adaptation leaves gaps. Gaps where villages once stood. Gaps where stories were once told. Gaps where children once played beside rivers, now buried in saltwater silence. Beneath the waves lie not just ruins, but forgotten beginnings. And the sea remains patient. Always patient. Take a quiet breath. Imagine standing in an empty stone city. Wind moving through broken doorways. No voices. No records. Only walls. Tonight, we explore civilizations that rose, flourished, and disappeared, without leaving written histories of themselves. Not because they were small, not because they were simple, but because writing either had not yet begun, or has not survived. Before the chronicles began. When we think of ancient history, we think of written records, clay tablets from Sumer, hieroglyphs from ancient Egypt, inscriptions from ancient Greece. But these were not the first human societies. They were simply the first whose writing survived. Before them and alongside them were cultures that built, organized, and traded, yet left little readable trace. Some left symbols we cannot decode. Others left nothing but foundations. The Indus Valley Mystery. Around 2600 BCE, a remarkable civilization thrived in what is now Pakistan and northwestern India. We call it the Indus Valley Civilization. Its cities were astonishing. Mohenjo-Daro, Harappa. They had grid-based streets, advanced drainage systems, standardized brick sizes, public baths. But here is the quiet mystery. We cannot read their script. Small seals have been found, carved with symbols, but no long texts, no bilingual inscriptions, no Rosetta Stone. Without decipherment, we do not know their rulers, their myths, their political structure, their reasons for decline. Around 1900 BCE, their cities gradually emptied. Climate change, river shifts, Economic transformation. We are not certain. A vast, organized civilization, and yet almost voiceless to us. The Minoan silence. On the island of Crete, the Minoan civilization flourished around 1450 BCE. They built grand palaces, including the complex at Knossos. Colorful frescoes show dancers, dolphins, ceremonies. They used writing systems known as Linear A and later Linear B. Linear B has been deciphered. It records administrative matters in early Greek. But Linear A, still unread, which means the original Minoan language remains unknown. We see their art. We walk their corridors, but we cannot hear their stories. After volcanic eruptions and possible invasions, Minoan power faded. Their culture was absorbed, and their voice, partially lost. The Olmec enigma. Across the ocean, in ancient Mesoamerica, the Olmec civilization thrived around 1500–400 BCE. They carved colossal stone heads, each weighing tons, each with unique facial features. They built ceremonial centers. They influenced later civilizations like the Maya. But their origins are unclear. Their language is uncertain. Their political structure is debated. They left symbols, but not long-readable texts. By 400 BCE, many of their centers were abandoned. Why? Environmental change, internal conflict, trade disruption. The jungle reclaimed their cities, and centuries passed before rediscovery. Cahokia, the forgotten metropolis. Near modern-day St. Louis in the United States once stood a vast city, Cahokia. Around 1050 CE, it may have housed 20,000 people. It had massive earthen mounds, organized neighborhoods, astronomical alignments. It was larger than many European cities of its time. And yet, it left no written records. Its people eventually dispersed. Disease, resource strain, social upheaval. We do not know. When European settlers arrived centuries later, Cahokia was already quiet. Its history was carried only in oral tradition, much of which was disrupted. The Sea Peoples, a shadowed force. Around 1200 BCE, civilizations across the eastern Mediterranean collapsed. The Hittite Empire fell. Cities burned. Trade networks shattered. Ancient Egypt recorded attacks by mysterious invaders known as the Sea Peoples. But who were they? A confederation. Climate refugees. Displaced migrants. They appear in Egyptian inscriptions, but they left no clear written identity of their own. They shaped history, then dissolved into it. The kingdom of Aksum's predecessors. In the Horn of Africa, before the rise of the kingdom of Aksum, there were earlier societies. Trade routes connected Africa, Arabia, and the Mediterranean. Archaeological sites suggest organized communities long before recorded history in the region. But climate, erosion, and time have erased much. Without surviving written accounts, early chapters remain fragmented. The fragility of record. Writing does not guarantee survival. Clay tablets crack. Papyrus rots. Wood decays. Libraries burn. Entire archives vanish in war. For every civilization we know well, there may be dozens we barely glimpse. History is not a complete archive. It is what remains after loss. Oral traditions, the invisible archive. Some civilizations relied on oral history. Stories memorized, poems recited, genealogies preserved through generations. But oral tradition depends on continuity. When societies are disrupted, Through migration, conquest, disease, oral chains break. And when they break, centuries can vanish, not because they did not happen, but because no one remains to tell them. Hash the quiet truth. It is comforting to imagine history as complete, but it is not. It is a patchwork, a mosaic with missing tiles. For every named king, there were thousands of unnamed leaders. For every recorded battle, there were countless unrecorded struggles. For every written law, there were unwritten customs shaping daily life. The majority of humanity's past has no text, only traces. Hash closing drift part 3 beginning. The vanished civilizations were not myths. They were real. They built. They organized. They dreamed. They governed. They celebrated. They feared. And then they faded. Without chroniclers. Without historians. Without libraries that survived. Only stones remained. And silence between them. The Etruscan whisper. Before the rise of imperial Rome, before marble forums and vast legions, central Italy was home to a sophisticated culture known as the Etruscan civilization. They built cities. They engineered roads. They influenced Roman religion, architecture, and political symbols. Yet their language remains only partially understood. We can read their alphabet. It resembles early Greek letters. But much of their vocabulary remains uncertain. We have tomb paintings, bronze mirrors, funerary inscriptions, but we do not possess long surviving texts explaining their worldview. When Rome expanded, Etruscan identity gradually dissolved into Roman society. Their cities continued, but their voice faded. Absorbed, rewritten. History often remembers the conqueror. The absorbed become footnotes. Hash the Bronze Age collapse. Around 1200 BCE, multiple advanced civilizations in the eastern Mediterranean declined almost simultaneously. The Mycenaean Greece fragmented. The Hittite Empire disappeared. Trade routes connecting Egypt, Anatolia, and the Levant shattered. For decades, historians debated the cause. Climate change, drought, earthquakes, internal rebellion, invasion, system collapse. Likely, it was not one cause. It was many. A network so interconnected that, when stress hit multiple points, it unraveled. Writing declined in some regions. Urban centers shrank. And for centuries, the historical record thinned. In Greece, this period became known as the Dark Age. Not because nothing happened, but because so little was recorded. Hash the knot culture, Africa's early artisans. In what is now Nigeria, the knot culture flourished around 1500 BCE to 500 CE. They created remarkable terracotta sculptures, elaborate hairstyles, expressive vases. They worked with iron earlier than many neighboring regions. And yet, we have no written record from them. We do not know their political system, their myths, their leaders. Archaeology reveals skill and organization, but history offers silence. The Knock sites were eventually abandoned. Erosion and time scattered their traces. Hash the hidden cities of the Amazon. For centuries, it was believed that the Amazon rainforest could not support large populations. The soil was thought too poor, the jungle too dense. But recent discoveries challenge that belief. In parts of Brazil and neighboring regions, archaeologists have identified vast earthworks, geometric mounds, road networks, raised agricultural fields. These suggest organized societies long before European contact. Not towering stone cities, but complex planned landscapes, much of it hidden beneath forest canopy for centuries. When European explorers arrived, disease swept through indigenous populations. Oral traditions fractured, communities dispersed, entire social systems collapsed before detailed records were written. The forest regrew, and silence returned. Great Zimbabwe stone without script. In southern Africa stands Great Zimbabwe. Massive stone walls built without mortar. Circular towers. Complex enclosures. It flourished between the 11th and 15th centuries. It was part of a trade network linking inland Africa with the Indian Ocean. Gold flowed through it. And yet, it left no surviving written archive of its own. When it declined, its population shifted elsewhere. Later colonial myths tried to deny its African origins, but archaeology confirms its creators were local. Still, the deeper details, governance, daily life, personal stories remain largely unknown. The ancestral Pueblones. In the American Southwest, the ancestral Pueblones built remarkable cliff dwellings, including those at Mesa Verde. Stone apartments carved into canyon walls. Kivas for ceremony. Astronomical alignments. Around the 13th century, many sites were gradually abandoned. Climate stress likely played a role. Drought. Resource pressure. Migration. Their descendants continue today in Pueblo communities. But detailed written accounts of the earlier centuries do not survive. The stones remain. The full narrative does not. The Khmer before Angkor's fall. In Southeast Asia, the Khmer Empire built the grand complex of Angkor Wat. But even before its decline in the 15th century, shifts were happening. Water management systems changed. Climate fluctuations stressed infrastructure. Political transitions occurred. Some inscriptions survive, but much of the social fabric, daily life, personal accounts is thin. When Angkor was gradually abandoned, jungle overtook the stone. Europe did not discover it. Local communities always knew of it, but global awareness faded for centuries. Even large empires can slip partially into obscurity. The Pacific navigators. Across the vast Pacific Ocean, Polynesian navigators crossed immense distances using stars, currents, and memory. They settled islands thousands of miles apart. Oral tradition preserved navigation knowledge. But writing was not central to their societies. When European contact disrupted island cultures through disease and colonization, some oral chains weakened. Knowledge that had once guided canoes across open ocean nearly disappeared in places. Revival efforts today reconnect with that heritage. But centuries of loss cannot be fully undone. The pattern of disappearance. As we move deeper into the lost ages, a pattern forms. Climate shifts, trade disruptions, environmental stress, cultural absorption, migration, disease, conquest. Civilizations rarely vanish overnight. They transform, they merge, they relocate. But when written continuity breaks, history fragments. The illusion of permanence. Every civilization believes itself stable, permanent, enduring. Yet history shows urban centers empty, languages fade, scripts become undeciphered, libraries burn, names are forgotten, and centuries later, archaeologists reconstruct what they can. Piece by careful piece. The space between records. Between every major civilization in textbooks lies a stretch of time where evidence grows thin. Not because humanity paused, but because records did not survive. These gaps can last decades, or centuries, or millennia, and within them lived countless ordinary people. Farmers, artisans, children, leaders whose names were never carved in stone. Their absence is not emptiness. It is simply lost context. A gentle reflection. As you drift toward sleep, consider this. If our own world lost electricity tomorrow, if archives vanished, if digital records failed, what would remain in 3,000 years? Stone, concrete, metal traces, foundations. Future historians might debate our beliefs, our systems, our intentions. Much would be guessed. Much would be wrong. The past is not silent because nothing happened. It is silent because survival of memory is fragile. Closing drift, part 3 deep. The vanished civilizations were not failures. They were phases, moments in a long human story. They built what they could. They adapted as long as they could. And when change came, they shifted. But when writing fades, memory fades faster, and the world moves on, leaving only walls without voices, symbols without translation, and the soft wind moving through forgotten streets. Take a slow breath. Imagine opening a history book and finding pages missing. Not burned, not torn, just blank. Tonight, we wander through the dark centuries. Not dark because nothing happened, but dark because we do not fully know what happened. The Greek Dark Age. After the fall of Mycenaean Greece around 1100 BCE, something changed. Palaces were abandoned. Trade networks collapsed. Writing, specifically Linear B, disappeared. For nearly 300 years, Greece entered what historians call the Greek Dark Age. There were still villages, still farming, still stories told around fires. But there were no surviving written records, no palace archives, no detailed chronicles. Iron replaced bronze. Population patterns shifted. When writing reappeared centuries later, in a new alphabet influenced by Phoenician script, poets like Homer composed epics such as the Iliad and the Odyssey. But those poems describe an earlier age, not the quiet centuries in between. What social structures formed during that silence? How did power reorganize? We piece it together from pottery styles and burial patterns. But the full human story is missing. The early Middle Ages in Europe. After the collapse of the Western Roman Empire in 476 CE, Europe did not fall into chaos everywhere. But centralized Roman administration faded. Urban populations shrank in many regions. Long-distance trade decreased. Literacy narrowed mostly to religious institutions. This period, often called the Early Middle Ages, was once labeled the Dark Ages. Modern historians avoid that term, recognizing that much was happening. New kingdoms formed. Agricultural techniques evolved. Cultural identities reshaped. Yet documentation became uneven. In some areas, we rely on monastic chronicles. In others, archaeology fills the gaps. But compared to the vast Roman record system, the centuries after feel quieter. Not empty, just less illuminated. Britain after Rome. When Roman legions withdrew from Roman Britain in the early 5th century, the written record thinned dramatically. Urban centers declined. Stone buildings decayed. Power structures shifted toward smaller kingdoms. Later legends speak of figures like King Arthur. But separating legend from history is difficult. Archaeology reveals settlements continued. Trade persisted in different forms. but detailed administrative documentation disappeared. For nearly 2 centuries, Britain exists in a semi-shadow. Not gone, just faint. The Maya collapse. In Mesoamerica, the Maya civilization built cities with towering pyramids and complex calendars. But around the 8th and 9th centuries CE, many southern lowland cities were abandoned. Monument inscriptions decreased. Population centers shifted northward. Climate studies suggest severe droughts. Political conflict likely intensified. Trade networks changed. The Maya did not vanish. Descendants still live today. But certain urban centers fell silent. The carved stele stopped. The jungle grew back. And for centuries, explorers wondered what happened. Even now, the full picture remains debated. The Khmer transition. The Khmer Empire built vast water systems around Angkor Wat. But in the 14th and 15th centuries, inscriptions decline. Urban cores shift. External pressures from neighboring powers increase. Climate fluctuations stress irrigation systems. Angkor was not destroyed in a single event. It transitioned. Gradually. Yet when European accounts later described the ruins, centuries of internal transformation had gone undocumented in detail. Between inscriptions and later chronicles lies a dim stretch of history. The Abbasid fragmentation. During the height of the Abbasid Caliphate, centers like Baghdad flourished intellectually and economically. But as central authority weakened in later centuries, regional dynasties emerged. Documentation became more localized. When the Mongols captured Baghdad in 1258, libraries were destroyed. Manuscripts lost. Scholars killed or dispersed. Entire scholarly traditions fractured. Some knowledge survived elsewhere. But gaps widened. We know brilliance existed. We know works were written. But not all survived conquest in time. Sub-Saharan transitions. In parts of West Africa, empires like Mali Empire and later Songhai Empire produced rich intellectual centers such as Timbuktu. Yet earlier regional transitions remain less documented. Oral traditions carried history, but external written accounts were limited. When political centers shifted, written continuity often thinned. Modern scholarship continues to recover manuscripts and reconstruct earlier phases. But centuries remain partially obscured. China's interregnum periods. In China, history is generally well documented. Yet even there, periods like the era between the fall of the Han Dynasty and the rise of the Sui Dynasty, known as the Six Dynasties period, reveal fragmentation. Multiple states, regional courts, conflicts. Although records exist, they are uneven. Some archives lost in warfare. Some biased toward certain regimes. Even in regions with strong literary traditions, continuity can fracture. When writing pauses. Dark centuries often share similar features. Collapse of centralized authority. Disruption of trade networks. Climate stress. Migration. Warfare. Technological shifts. When administrative systems break down, record-keeping declines. When scribal schools vanish, literacy narrows. When cities empty, archives rot. The absence of documents does not mean absence of life. It means interruption of preservation. Archaeology as light. In these dark centuries, archaeology becomes our lantern. Pottery fragments, carbon-dated charcoal, settlement layers, pollen analysis, tree ring data. These scientific methods illuminate what writing does not. They reveal drought cycles, agricultural shifts, migration patterns, but they do not capture conversations. or personal thoughts, or poetry never written. The silence between empires. History books often jump from empire to empire, Roman to Byzantine, Han to Tang, Maya classic to post-classic, but the transitions are rarely smooth. Between grand chapters lie transitional eras, decades of uncertainty, centuries of adaptation. These in-between times are often the least recorded, yet they are when societies reshape themselves. Quietly, without fanfare, a gentle reflection. As you rest, consider how much of modern life depends on record keeping. Digital archives, cloud storage, global databases. If systems failed, if power grids collapsed, future centuries might experience their own dark age of documentation. Not because humanity stopped, but because preservation faltered. The fragility of memory has always shadowed civilization. Closing drift, Part 4, opening movement. The dark centuries are not voids. They are shadows cast by broken archives. They are seasons of transition. Moments when the pen paused, when scribes disappeared, when cities reorganized. Life continued, but the record dimmed. And we, centuries later, peer into that dimness, trying to listen, trying to reconstruct, trying to hear whispers in the dark. When libraries burn, civilizations store memory in fragile places. Scroll rooms, clay tablet shelves, monasteries, royal archives. When those places fall, memory fractures. One of the most famous losses was the Library of Alexandria in Egypt. Over centuries, through political turmoil, fires, and decline, countless scrolls vanished. We do not know exactly how many. We do not know exactly what they contained. Scientific treatises, plays, philosophy, travel accounts from lands now undocumented. The destruction was not one dramatic moment. It was gradual erosion. And with each lost manuscript, a small darkening of the historical sky. The collapse of scribal systems. Writing is not automatic. It requires trained scribes, education systems, stable institutions, materials, patronage. When centralized authority collapses, scribal training often collapses with it. After the fall of Mycenaean Greece, the linear B writing system disappeared. Not simplified, not evolved, vanished, because the palace system that required it was gone. Similarly, when the Western Roman Empire fractured, large bureaucratic record systems diminished in Western Europe. Local communities continued, but large-scale archival habits weakened. Writing narrows quickly when power structures shift. Climate and quiet. Recent climate research suggests that periods of cooling or drought often align with dark centuries. Tree rings show severe droughts in parts of the Mediterranean around the late Bronze Age collapse. Ice core data reveals volcanic eruptions that darken skies. Crop failures follow. Trade slows. Cities shrink. And when urban populations decrease, so does centralized record keeping. In parts of Mesoamerica, drought cycles may have contributed to the decline of classic Maya civilization cities. Monument inscriptions declined. Construction slowed. Political systems fragmented. The silence of writing may reflect environmental strain. The monasteries, keepers of light. In medieval Europe, while cities shifted and kingdoms formed, monasteries quietly preserved texts. In places like Lindisfarne and Monte Cassino, monks copied manuscripts by hand. Page after page, letter after letter. Without them, Much of classical literature would be lost. Even so, they could only copy what they possessed. If a manuscript never reached a monastery, it vanished. For every preserved text, many disappeared forever. Monasteries were candles in dark centuries, but candles illuminate only a small circle. The Abbasid Golden Age and its fragmentation. During the height of the Abbasid Caliphate, scholars in Baghdad translated Greek, Persian, and Indian works. Astronomy flourished. Mathematics advanced. Medicine expanded. But when Baghdad fell to the Mongols in 1258, libraries were destroyed. Scholars dispersed. Knowledge survived in fragments, carried to Cairo, Damascus, and elsewhere. Yet some works vanished entirely. We know they existed. We have references to them. But the originals are gone. This creates partial darkness, not total but deep enough to obscure detail. Transitional China. Even in regions with strong literary continuity like China, dynastic transitions created periods of fragmentation. The era between the Han and Tang dynasties saw multiple competing states. Some archives were destroyed in warfare. Others biased toward victorious regimes. Although records exist, they reflect selective survival. History is rarely neutral. It is shaped by which documents endure. Even well-documented civilizations have shadowed edges. The Americas before contact. In many parts of North and South America, oral traditions carried history across generations. But when European contact brought disease, populations declined rapidly in some regions. Entire knowledge chains were interrupted. Languages disappeared. Ceremonial specialists died without apprentices. In places once linked to cities like Cahokia, centuries of transition occurred before written European accounts began. By then, earlier political systems had transformed. We reconstruct these eras through archaeology. But oral memory, lost during epidemics, created dark centuries within living history. The illusion of sudden collapse. Often, dark centuries create the illusion of sudden disappearance. But collapse is rarely instant. It is gradual. Administrative offices close. Trade caravans stop arriving. Monument construction slows. Literacy narrows. Records become sporadic. From afar, it appears as a dramatic fall. Up close, it was likely a long season of adaptation. People did not experience the end. They experienced change. But when documentation thins, later generations see only silence. Lost technologies. Dark centuries can hide technological knowledge. For example, concrete formulas used in ancient Rome were partially lost for centuries. Certain metallurgical techniques faded in some regions during transitional periods. Navigation knowledge in parts of the Pacific Ocean nearly disappeared before revival efforts. Knowledge depends on continuity. Break the chain, and even advanced systems can vanish. The psychological weight of silence. Why do dark centuries fascinate us? Because humans prefer narrative. We like beginnings and endings, clear causes, named leaders. But dark centuries resist that clarity. They remind us, history is incomplete. Memory is selective. Survival is uneven. And silence can be as meaningful as speech. The slow return of light. Eventually, writing returns. New alphabets. New chronicles. New inscriptions. After the Greek Dark Age, city-states emerge. After Europe's early Middle Ages, urban revival begins. After fragmentation in China, reunification dynasties arise. The dark centuries are not permanent. They are intervals, breathing spaces in history's long rhythm. Hash a soft reflection. As you rest, imagine your own life without photographs, without written messages, without recorded names. How much would survive in 2,000 years? Perhaps a foundation, a fragment of metal, a buried structure. Future historians might reconstruct your era from debris, and they would experience their own dark centuries, even within our age. Because even today, preservation is selective. Hash closing drift part 4 deep. The dark centuries are not empty. They are shadowed. They are moments when ink fades, archives thin, institutions weaken, climate shifts, people adapt quietly. Life continues, but the record dims, and we, centuries later, stand in the half-light, listening for echoes, trying to fill the gaps, trying to understand the silence between empires. The fragility of human innovation. Throughout history, humans have built, measured, calculated, and experimented. Some inventions endure. Others vanish. Not because they were impossible. Not because they were foolish. But because the knowledge was fragile tied to societal structures, skilled artisans, materials and tools, transmission from one generation to the next. When those chains break, even the most brilliant discoveries can disappear. Hash the mystery of Roman concrete. Romans constructed harbors, aqueducts, and monumental structures that survived 2 millennia. Particularly, Roman concrete was extraordinary. Unlike most modern concrete, it resists seawater erosion. It grows stronger with age due to chemical interactions with volcanic ash and lime. Yet after the fall of the Roman Empire, the recipe was largely lost. Medieval Europe could not reproduce the same durability. Modern scientists have spent decades studying remnants from ports like Pozzuoli to reverse engineer it. Thousands of years of knowledge, mostly forgotten. Hash the Antikythera mechanism. In 1901, divers off the coast of Greece recovered a strange bronze device from a sunken ship. It became known as the Antikythera mechanism ***. Dating to around 100 BCE, it is an astronomical calculator, capable of predicting eclipses and planetary positions. Gears and dials, sophisticated to a degree not seen again for over a millennium. Historians were astonished. How could such mechanical precision exist so early? And then vanish, leaving no comparable machines for centuries. Hash lost navigational maps. Long before global mapping became standardized, sailors navigated oceans with tools and maps now mostly lost. Polynesian navigators used star paths, ocean swells, and bird flight patterns. Early Chinese fleets charted coastlines with remarkable accuracy. Medieval European portolan charts existed, some dating to the 13th century, showing coastlines in detail. Yet many maps disappeared with floods, fires, invasions, or decay. Entire coastlines known to ancient sailors became unknown lands in later centuries because the knowledge was not preserved. Hash forgotten metallurgy. Metallurgical techniques have appeared and disappeared throughout history. Wootz steel produced in ancient India became legendary for its sharpness and strength. Its method was lost for centuries, only partially rediscovered in the 18th century. Damascus steel, once famed for swordmaking, vanished after the 18th century. Certain bronze alloys in the Bronze Age, capable of casting precise objects, left no surviving manufacturing guides. Knowledge can vanish not because it is hard, but because the people who know it are gone. Hash ancient engineering marvels. Some civilizations built wonders we cannot fully replicate today. Pumapunku, massive stone blocks cut with astonishing precision, perfectly aligned. Mohenjo-Daro, urban drainage systems far ahead of European cities for millennia. Teotihuacan, multi-story structures aligned astronomically, with labor and planning we struggle to calculate today. We see the stones, we see the layout, but the methods, tools, and organizational systems remain partially lost to time. The Greek fire enigma. The Byzantine Empire employed Greek fire asterisk, a weapon of war that could burn on water. Formulas for Greek fire were a closely guarded secret. By the 12th century, the exact recipe was gone. Historians can only speculate at its ingredients and mechanisms. Some modern chemists attempt to recreate it, but the original art remains an unsolved historical puzzle. Lost medical knowledge. Ancient civilizations often had sophisticated medical understanding. Ancient Egypt, surgical instruments and procedures preserved in tombs. Ayurvedic India, detailed herbal remedies and dietary guidance. Ancient Greece, Hippocratic texts outlining observation-based medicine. Yet countless remedies, practices, and anatomical knowledge were lost when texts decayed or libraries burned. The mystery of lost civilizations, knowledge. We know knowledge was lost because we find hints. Tools in ruins with no surviving instructions. Complex urban layouts with unknown construction methods. Artifacts suggesting advanced measurement or scientific awareness. These traces remind us that humans have repeatedly invented, applied, and then forgotten asterisk. The lost ages are filled with brilliance that vanished without a trace. Reflection on human memory. The vanishing of knowledge is a reminder. Written records are fragile. Oral traditions can be interrupted. Technologies can outlive their creators, but not their transmission systems. Even today, in the digital era, preservation is uncertain. History always risks a asterisk dark century of lost knowledge, waiting silently beneath the surface. The traces that remain. Even when cities vanish and archives disappear, the world keeps a record. Stone, metal, pottery, soil layers, impressions left in mud and sand. A foundation for a house that once stood. A burial mound holding unrecorded stories. A submerged riverbed with footprints frozen in silt. These remnants are faint, but they are resilient. They whisper fragments of life that writing could not preserve. Archaeology listening to silence. Archaeologists act as listeners to the echoes of the past. They read what is left. Pottery shards tell about trade and daily life. Bones reveal diet, health, and ritual practices. Soil layers hint at floods, fires, and human movement. Even if the full story is lost, fragments form patterns. They allow us to hear the silence's asterisk. Oral traditions, the living memory. While physical records decay, stories sometimes survive orally. Myths, legends, songs, rituals. These oral traditions often preserve kernels of historical truth. For example, stories of a great flood appear worldwide, hinting at regional inundations. Heroic tales in Europe, Africa, and the Americas often encode historical migrations or conflicts. Even when fragmented, oral history keeps the human experience alive. Artifacts and symbols. Objects carry memory. A carved stone face in Olmec civilization. Terracotta figurines from Nok culture. Frescoes in Minoan palaces. We may not know the names, the rituals, or the full meanings. But these artifacts speak in silence. They testify to creativity, skill, and shared humanity. The legacy of architecture. Monuments often outlive memory. Great Zimbabwe, walls that endure beyond the fall of empires. Angkor Wat, intricate systems of water and stone. Pumapunku, precise stone cuts resisting erosion. Buildings, walls, and roads tell us about asterisk organization, planning, and ambition asterisk. Even when the people vanish, their creations echo. Submerged remnants. Water preserves as much as it hides. Doggerland, traces of river, forests, and early settlements beneath the North Sea. Black Sea, shipwrecks and possible underwater villages. Sunken coasts of Australia, submerged river channels and forests. Even silent, drowned landscapes carry history. They are archives beneath waves. Written fragments. Not all texts are lost. Clay tablets from Mesopotamia survive millennia. Inscriptions on stone endure through weather and time. Scrolls rescued from desert caves or monastery walls preserve knowledge against odds. Even fragmentary writing allows reconstruction of asterisk economy, law, religion, and culture. Rediscovery through science. Modern science illuminates the lost ages. Carbon dating places artifacts in chronological context. DNA analysis reveals migrations and ancestry. Remote sensing and satellite imagery expose buried structures. Ice cores, pollen analysis, and sediment layers reconstruct environmental history. Through these methods, echoes become partially legible again. The lost ages speak, we just need patience to listen. The human spirit in remnants. Even when civilization fades, human intention persists. The alignment of megaliths. Astronomical observatories. Water management systems. Decorative art and ritual objects. All show asterisk planning, observation, and creativity asterisk. The echoes tell us, humans have always sought to shape their world, record meaning, and connect with others. Lessons from the lost ages. The lost ages remind us. One memory is fragile asterisk. Writing, artifacts, and oral traditions can vanish. 2. Knowledge is precious asterisk. Preservation depends on people, culture, and transmission. 3. Adaptation is constant asterisk. Civilizations rise, transform, or fade, but life continues. 4. Curiosity endures. We reconstruct, infer, and imagine from remnants. Even faint traces carry profound insight. A gentle closing. As you drift toward sleep, think of the past as layers. Submerged rivers. Empty streets of vanished cities. Lost tools and technologies. Silent scrolls and broken monuments. They are fragments of the human journey. We may never know the full stories, but the echoes remain patient, quiet, enduring. They remind us that asterisk history is alive even in absence asterisk. Final reflection, part 6. The lost ages are not voids. They are quiet corridors in time. They are asterisk gaps filled with imagination, fragments, and faint traces asterisk. Our ancestors left behind stones, metals, pigments, and echoes. And we, centuries later, are here to listen, to reconstruct, to honor, to imagine. The lost ages whisper, and we are still learning to hear them.